Hello, my name is Irakli Kakabadze and I come from Georgia. As you have seen, there have been a number of attempts to demonstrate against the homophonic discourse. What we have right now around the world, and not just in Georgia, but Georgia is a good example, of course, of neoliberal censorship and of the place where other voices are not being heard other than those that are of the dominant discourse. And we have many times tried to penetrate that glass ceiling. But unfortunately it's very difficult, and many writers, as of we speak right now, and editors are going to prison. Just about 2 days ago, the main editor of Trialeti television was beaten and arrested for voicing their true voice, basically reporting on the violations of human rights in Georgia. Georgia is not, however, the only country. In post-Soviet Union, we have so-called postmodern authoritarian regimes, starting from Russia and continuing with Turkmenistan, Kazakhstan, Armenia, Azerbaijan, and others. We are no different. We are trying to say that we are building democracy, but unfortunately, democracy has lots of problems in those countries. And number one, which is very important to writers and artists and journalists, is the freedom of expression. The voices that are not within the dominant discourse. And now, after Washington consensus, we have a dominant discourse of neoliberal, capitalist, oligarchic discourse, are being marginalized, are being unfed, are being arrested. And if you voice your opposition, for instance, my country is the only country that has the street of George W. Bush, one of the few countries, I would say. And some poets decided to read Walt Whitman poetry in the street instead of agreeing with that discourse of George W. Bush and human torture and occupation of countries. They are put in prison. So we as writers, and we as international community of human rights defenders need to unite in seeking to really hear the other voices. Voices that are polyphonic and not homophonic. In terms of great Russian philosopher Mikhail Bakhtin, polyphony is the best way to understand humanity. Today we have a 21st century and we are facing new challenges. And the world needs to adopt the principle of diversity of cultures, and not just cultures, of the voices, of the social economic class. So many oppressed people who are there, marginalized and starving. My country of Georgia, which was a communist country 20 years ago, was in a Soviet empire 20 years ago. Right now we have many poor people whose voices are not heard. Under this new neoliberal, postmodern, authoritarian regime that basically ignores the poor of the world and also ignores the voices that are dissenting, the dissident voices. It is ironic that during the Soviet Union, the dissident voices of Zriyad Gamsakhurdi and Merab Kostava were heard more than today's dissident voices of the poets and writers and journalists. So our main cause here, and those two young authors that you have seen there on the poems were being fired and being marginalized after what they did with the Bush Street, which lots of Georgian people have empathized with their feeling about the poetry and against the Bush doctrine. So we are looking forward towards collaborating with people, our friends in Turkey, our friends around the world, and I'm being extremely thankful of PEN International, who has supported freedom of speech in Georgia significantly, to find new voices and to find different voices to express in the words of today, 21st century, the polyphonic voice, where all voices are heard, all languages are heard, small languages and big languages, and also voice of these people more than 3 billion people who are not seen and who are not noticed is also heard, not the voice of rich and privileged and heads of state and oligarchs. So this is our cry, basically, and I'm sure we share in solidarity the feelings that have the writers here in Turkey and other places have expressed. Thank you very much.